All right. Hello and welcome to Leader Site, my little experiment where we explore leadership, trying to see if we can provide people with some insights, some foresight, and of course, some 2020 hindsight. And I'm very pleased today to have as my guest someone who I have a lot of admiration for, and I like someone who I like talking to about leadership, which is Mary McClure, who is the CEO of Green Mountain Power, a company that we in Vermont are very proud of because they do a lot of really innovative things in a space that really matters to people, keeping the lights on and innovating at the same time. So welcome, Mary McClure.
Hi, Eric. Thank you. That was a very kind intro. I've always enjoyed talking to you about leadership. So thank you. You
Mary,
bring it out. Bring it out.
Mary, I think this is going to be fun.
Good.
And as you know, we have a very lightly sketched plan, so we'll just see where this goes. But we have a nice group of people on this call. I know most of the people on this call, Mary, and I think I can say with confidence that you would enjoy chatting with all these people. So that's what we'll get to do today.
That's great. Well, I recognize Phil up there. Hi, Phil. I haven't seen you in a while. Nice to see you. We were in Leadership Champlain together
Nice.
years and years ago at this point. But
great to see you.
Nice to see you too.
So for those of you who don't know Mary, I'm going to do a quick visual intro here. This is the highly geeky control center at it's either Green Mountain Power or a place very similar where they monitor the power grid for Vermont, and lots of trucks, big trucks. How big are these trucks, Mary?
They're pretty big. They're over 10,000 pounds, and yeah, they're pretty big. A lot of hydraulics in those trucks, and we're working on getting electric ones. So that's an exciting development over the last year or two. Yeah.
Mary, when you were in law school, were you thinking that you might be, sort of overseeing a fleet of enormous trucks, enormous orange trucks?
Oh, I wasn't at all. I often say, like, when I pulled up in the parking lot for my first day at GMP back in 2010, I had this moment of like, oh dear, what have I done? Because I had not envisioned ever working at a utility, so to speak. But I of course quickly learned we were very unutility at Green Mountain Power, which was fabulous and continues to be. But yeah, no, it was not on my it wasn't on my my list of things I thought I would have the opportunity to do. So
yes, perhaps Green Mountain Power, like most businesses, is full of people, human beings. And Mary McClure thinks very carefully about leading people. So here's some team members, and I snapped this picture when I was visiting there one day. I just thought this was cool. These
our
what are these poles made out of, Mary?
Oh, they're very carefully made. They're and they're different lengths, so it depends on what exactly we're accomplishing out in the field on a given day. There's ones that are devoted more to the poles and wires you see on the side of the road, and then there's ones devoted more to what might be what we call cross country or more rural. But it's just, typical wood, but it's treated to keep it able to go many, many years. I think the average age of our poles right now is anywhere between 20 and 25 years old. So we have some that are older than that and some that are newer. And but it's a pretty fascinating part of the business, what goes into putting one of those in the ground and keeping it there for many, many decades.
Where do they grow these poles?
Actually, there's lots of different places. We source them from all over the place. In fact, because it's something that every utility really across the world uses, they're easy to source because there's such demand no matter where you go in the world, but particularly here in the United States, you're going to find, a company that will source these. So that's a good thing. Oh dear, yeah.
Now, this slightly blurry picture is from a previous life. So Mary McClure and I have talked. There's a few things we're gonna get into. We're gonna talk a little bit about basketball, which Mary and I both enjoy, and lessons she might have learned from coaches because she's passionate about coaching. And I just wanted to show you this snap of Mary going hard to the hoop as a part of the Division I basketball team Buffalo, where you were captain for a couple of years, right?
I was, yeah, I was a captain my junior year and my senior year. And Buffalo is another example of similar to Green Mountain Power, of a place I did not think I would land. I'm from the Midwest, just north of Detroit, born in Indiana, and I had a dream to play Division I hoops for a Big Ten school. So I was wanting to play for Michigan State or Indiana. Was really my dream school. And I had an unfortunate injury my junior year of high school, and I lost any school that had been recruiting me that got the Detroit Free Press dropped me. But Buffalo did not get the Detroit Free Press, so they did not know about my injury and kept recruiting me. And so I ended up there and was very grateful for it. These things in your life that happen that at the time you think are disasters actually end up being wonderful guides to you in your life. So Buffalo was one of those experiences for me.
What was it about it, Mary, that ended up being a blessing at Buffalo?
Well, I think I got to experience collegiate athletics in a different way from my peers who went to a bigger program, so to speak. So Buffalo, while it's a Division I program, it would be more deemed what they call like a mid-major program. So whereas a Big Ten school would be a major program. And so a different experience as a student athlete, I think I got. And I also had the pleasure of getting coaches at Buffalo along the way that were up and coming and using Buffalo as a stepping stone to a bigger university. So I had an opportunity to play for some really powerful coaches that went on to do, go to bigger programs or bigger schools, but I got them in that moment. So that was one thing. And then Buffalo, the city, it's just a wonderful city with wonderful people, and has a lot of culture to it that anyone that is connected with that city would know exists. But outside of it, you wouldn't necessarily know it. So I was hoping to be in Bloomington, Indiana, or East Lansing, Michigan, and I got Buffalo, New York. And so I got this experience in a city that and I grew a lot through that I'm not sure I would have had in East Lansing.
So I like you're very articulate about growth, and this is interesting that through an injury, through a wound, something good happens. And some of the things on the table for us here are basketball coaching, vulnerability, humanity. How do you think about facilitating team? And then maybe after we're going to have the way I do this. About at halfway, I let people have a breakout experience and talk a little bit about the ideas we've shared, and they come back. Then they can ask you questions. So we'll probably talk for 20 more minutes, and then after that, maybe we get at the end, we can talk a little about the future of energy, which I think is so fascinating, and you're certainly out there on the cutting edge. But so you mentioned special coaches. So I don't know, what's a special coach, Mary?
Yeah.
What makes a coach great?
I used to think that, like when I was a young player, I used to think that what made a coach great was, obviously looking at wins and losses. But I also thought it was a coach that had a lot of consistency in how they approached their teams, or consistency of how they taught the game. So one of my mentors growing up was Bobby Knight at Indiana. And I thought, wow, he was just such a great coach. He obviously had wins, a lot of wins, a lot of championships, but he had this like, Bobby Knight's way. And when you went and played for Bobby Knight, you knew what you were getting into. It was Bobby Knight's way, and he didn't deviate from it no matter what. And that made him a great coach. And I've grown from that belief in my experience as an older athlete. So by the time I got, through my, a couple of years of college athletics, I started to realize that what really made a good coach, and I actually think Bobby Knight, this is what resulted in potentially his time to exit coaching, which he ultimately did at Indiana, but was they actually got to learn the uniqueness of each of their teams and the unique blend of the individuals on their teams. And they crafted what success would look like based off that, not necessarily based off an existing script that they fit their individuals into, but rather a real deep dive into the individuals on the team, how they all worked together, and then develop the script. And that was something that I realized, I think maybe towards the second half of my junior year, I had a coach that really operated more that way. And I saw the value of it. And it's been something I've used as I've gone through my life in other phases, whether it was a student in law school or private practice, or now at Green Mountain Power, of really viewing my job when I'm in a leadership role of knowing who is on the team, really knowing who's on the team and what makes them tick, what makes them hum, what are their real strengths, and focusing on that as I think about the broader strategy for that particular team. And it's got to change. It's got to be fluid because you're going to get different players. And I think that that's an approach that many coaches have been taking more recently, whether you look at college or professional basketball. Many coaches are taking that approach, and it's more of a new age way of looking at athletics. And I think it really, really applies to life wherever you're leading, whether it's at home because you're a parent, or at work, or wherever you go where you're in a leadership role. And really, where are you going when you're not in a leadership role? Really understanding who it is around you and what their strengths are. Coaches that do that, I have a lot of belief in, even if they're not necessarily winning. I think it'll come to them. They're playing the long game, which I think is more productive way of playing the game. So
I've noticed this in the NBA, Mary, which I follow. This thing you're talking about, there's a much more talk about a relational approach to coaching professional basketball players. And it's almost like I've heard a lot of, there's a movement called like positive coaching where they really focus on people's positives. And I think it's kind of fascinating to watch that evolve.
Yep.
And,
it is. And it's, it kind of plays off. I had a coach that,
getting to know people.
Yeah, it's right. And you play, like in sports, I often wish we had this in real life, but because it was so meaningful to me, but you have game film, and you literally, whether it's practice or a game, you're taping it. Well, that's what we did. We taped it back in the day. We had tapes. And then we would sit as a team, and the coach, assistant coach, head coach, whoever would walk you through the entire game as an entire team, and stop, rewind, and some coaches really were good at criticizing. Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? And some coaches had a special ability to point out where a strength of yours was being overused. And for me, that is a really powerful way of looking at any team you're on, that weaknesses are simply your strengths being overused. And I think that is a complete flip of how you view a weakness. So instead of looking at it from a position of criticism or negativity, you're actually looking at it as a position where it's a positive thing in your life, you just happen to be overusing it. So learning when, so I can think of examples where I had a player who every time she'd get an on ball screen, she would just like hustle too quickly to come off that ball screen. And what she'd end up doing is whoever set the screen for her would get called for a foul, an offensive foul, because she moved too quick off the screen. And her strength is she was always wanting to go on the court, what we would call north-south. She just wanted to, she had this energy of like, I got the ball, I got to go. And it often resulted for her in score. I mean, she was a very high scorer, but when that on ball screen, when she used that strength that way, she overused it, and it would, and when you put it in that framework for her,
Yeah,
it totally unlocked her ability to see when her strengths were being used in a way that were positive and when they were being used in a way that were negative. And it just changed her whole mindset. And some coaches had an ability to do that in game film. And I think some leaders have a real ability to do that with their teams, and versus a critical approach. And I think, Eric, that's what you're thinking of as a new way or a positive way of coaching. And, you know, have you ever seen those videos of people, it's like an experience where they have a person stand up in front of them, like in front of a panel of people, and they have to spin a plate on their finger. Have you seen those?
no.
Okay, well, they had somebody do it really well. So she spun the plate on her finger and she did it really well. Afterwards, the panel critiqued her to death. Told her she wasn't good. You got to do this better. You got to do this better. Go off and get better and come back. Then they had somebody come in who spun and was terrible. And all they did was praise her. Oh, you did a great job. And she's sort of like, I don't think I did. And no, you did a great job. And then they brought both of them back. And she, the one that had been praised, improved tremendously and was now spinning the plate on her finger in a way she never was the first time. Conversely, the woman that they critiqued was terrible compared to her first.
Wow.
So it's just an exercise.
Yeah.
You can Google that. That exists.
Power of appreciation.
There is something about that.
Some of my mentors talk about this, that this just this tremendous underutilized power of appreciation. And
Yeah.
some of the leaders that are most inspiring to me that I get to watch in my business that just have this huge capacity to appreciate other people.
Yeah.
Very different kinds of people, and a lot of commitment to that.
Yeah.
Which I think you have too. I think you spend a lot of time thinking about your players. And by the way, Mary coached in college basketball too. I found that out in preparing at Colgate. So,
Yep.
So let me ask you though. So let's like think. How do you deal with like? I mean, you're getting into this to me rich area of business leadership, which is developing people.
Yeah.
You know, and the adaptive organization that has adaptive players who can adapt their game and a leader who can foster that.
Yeah.
On the basketball team, ever have any conflict?
Yeah.
You know, people who wanted minutes and weren't getting minutes, or you were stealing someone's minutes and that kind of thing. I wonder, what did you see there for great coaches? What'd you learn from your great coaches about managing that?
Yeah, that very rarely doesn't show up on a team, and it very rarely doesn't show up on a team, particularly at that level. Like when you're at a Division I level, or you're on a team of very talented people, that shows up. I've never been involved on a team where that didn't show up at some point. Where that tension happens, where, you know, the 11th person on the bench thinks they should be the 4th, and you're managing those dynamics, and they're in a locker room together, and there's all those, a focus on abundance versus scarcity has always been how I have seen successful coaches and successful leaders manage through that somewhat natural tension that happens between human beings who are all kind of in the same boat together, where are you coming from a place of abundance or a place of scarcity? Ask yourself that question. And, obviously, a position of abundance feels much better, much more positive, and is an outlook on a team that results in far more success and progress than individuals coming from a place of scarcity. So it's a framing of what progress looks like, so that your 11th player on the bench feels just as responsible for the success of the team, notwithstanding the fact that maybe her contribution is Wednesday and Thursdays at practice, when she really pushes the starting point guard to something, versus, oh, I need minutes, and that's what success looks like. So when you create an environment of abundance where everybody on the team has a very important contribution to make, versus a place of scarcity where all it's about is minutes and points, you create an environment where everybody feels like they have a role and feel just as responsible for the success or the failure. Whereas scarcity is a totally different mindset and is a danger point for any team if you have individuals that are in scarcity mode.
You're telling me I should maybe think about how I talk to my daughter, who's a freshman at Champlain Valley Union on the basketball team, and not maybe get her so obsessed on how to win the minutes.
That's right. I mean,
You're kind of schooling me here, McClure.
I will tell you that any great player on a great team will tell you that the most influential folks for them are their teammates who don't get a lot of minutes, because they're the ones in practice that are pushing you. If you're in the starting five, or there's only 8 people who play in a game, but there's 15 people on the team, it can't possibly be true that only those 8 people are the reason why they win. And it really is an exercise in getting outside of yourself and what you view as important.
Right, like a narrow definition of success.
Yep.
You're making me think about people who worked for a company for a long time and then applied for a CIO job and competed against people who didn't work for the company and they didn't get the job, but who continued to have this tremendously generous service mindset towards their new boss and their boss's boss who didn't hire them. And then eventually, 5 years later, they're the CIO, and how incredibly valuable that mindset is. But you're kind of getting to my heart there, Mary, about this person who's, just getting that big perspective of like, I'm going to contribute to this win in a very different way. And I just want to pivot over a little bit to humanity, because this is probably some of the most meaningful conversations I've had with you. I think there's a myth out there that's getting broken every day, that people like you who've had a lot of success, you become the CEO of the largest power company in Vermont, are, kind of exceptionally bulletproof or just, incredibly confident. I have really been struck, Mary, at how, I don't know, personal insecurity is not necessarily absent from the most successful people I've ever worked with.
No.
I know go ahead.
I do not. I don't really know what confidence is.
Okay.
I don't. I think that whole concept is false. I don't know what that is. I will tell you that times in my life where I have felt like I feel nervous all the time. It's just who I am. I'm like kind of a nervous person. Like I have anxiety, or I have like negative loops. And actually one of my coaches really helped me deal with this at one point in my life because, here I was, like what people outside of my head would say, why are you nervous? You're like a really talented basketball player. And, none of that mattered. Because I had this like negative loop of headed into a game, like I would picture bad things happening, right? Like turning the ball over, missing a free throw, getting the ball at the end of the game and missing the shot. And this very visual things would come through my head. And I used to be like, gosh, something's wrong with me. Why do I think that way? And it's like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. First of all, allow yourself to have thoughts. Like I can't control. They're just thoughts coming. I'm being thought at any given moment. I'm not doing anything to have those thoughts. They're just popping up in my head. But what am I believing is the key. So those thoughts come in and that's okay. Like here comes the thought that I'm going to miss the free throw. And then I introduce a visual of myself hitting the free throw. And that was something a coach said, oh, no, don't worry about the vision you're having of missing. Just also add in there the vision of you making. And that is something I've used now going through my life in other aspects that's been really instrumental. And I think confidence isn't this destination you get to or some being ready, like, oh, I'll do that when I'm ready. It's just about being brave. That's all it is. It's just about being brave. And it's not easy, but that's what it's about. And I think leaders that say, well, that they have a lot of confidence or that they don't have self-doubt or I don't know. I don't know if that's real. That doesn't feel very human to me.
I've known some people who I thought had an sort of extraordinary, I will not back down kind of thing, and it actually got them into trouble.
Yeah.
But I think, one of the things I think about what you said, which I love, is that conscientiousness and self-doubt are often brother and sister. They're close together. And that's really powerful what you said about like, not so much framing these thoughts as, oh, this is a problem, I have to get rid of these thoughts.
Yeah, no.
But kind of like embracing them and adding something to them instead.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. It's helped me a lot to not get caught up in, because I'm having a thought, somehow it's true.
Yeah.
And just letting
It's identification from the thoughts.
Yep.
I'm not my thoughts. Do you still have that? So here you are, you've gotten this like really amazing job. Is it still there? Still going on?
Oh gosh.
Didn't go away, huh, Mary?
No, it didn't go away. In fact, I've only found it get more intense as I've gone through my life.
Really?
But no, it doesn't go.
More intense self-doubt.
Yeah. Just or having to really check in with myself on a regular basis around not believing everything I'm thinking or everything I'm hearing, good or bad. Sometimes when you get in this job, it becomes more of an exercise of like, you have to, people will, like who's actually telling you what you need to know? Who's actually telling you what you need to hear versus who's just telling you what they think you want to hear. So the exercise of what I'm thinking and what I'm believing about those thoughts has shifted as I've gone through my life and been in different jobs. But the practice of having to be very mindful about that has not changed. In fact, it's probably only gotten more intense as I've moved along. And I don't think, like, I would love to blow the myth that somehow self-doubt is negative. I just don't see it that way.
I'm trying to help you do. I think we're doing a little bit. We're doing our part here, man.
Yeah, good.
I think it's wonderful to hear you, say it in this way. You just said something about the team, so I want to just touch on this a little too. Like you talked a lot about like how you get the best ideas out of a team.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard you speak about this, and you just talked about something like getting into a spot where you're hearing what they really think,
Mm-hmm.
not what they think you want them to think.
Mhm.
So I don't know, can you tell a little about the art of that? What are you learning about that? About
Yeah,
getting the best thinking out?
yeah, it's hard. You really have to work at creating an environment where people feel, I've heard it described in different ways, like psychologically safe, or,
Mhm.
um, but how I think of it is you have to work on an environment where people are comfortable being vulnerable with each other. And that starts with the example that's getting set by the leader. Is the leader
Mm.
vulnerable? Is the leader making herself vulnerable?
Mm.
Um, if if not, and that vulnerability isn't available or shown to the team, you're not very likely to have it happening in those moments where you're looking for people to really share their views on something. So that's one aspect of it. And then the second thing I think is working on what I think gets confused a lot, and particularly in business, I've noticed more than athletics, task conflict versus relationship conflict, and managing the difference between those. And a lot of people who aren't comfortable with conflict can confuse task conflict with relationship conflict. And if as a leader, you aren't managing that very well, even though you're setting a vulnerable environment for people, if you aren't also helping and managing and watching where folks might get confused or caught up in task and relationship conflict, you could have a situation where you have relationship conflict that's preventing people really sharing what they really think. So yeah, I mean, obviously,
Can you define these two things, task and relationship? I think I get it, but what are they?
yeah, I think of task conflict as like we are working through a particular issue or a task, or say we're trying to make a decision on something, direction we want to go, and
Right.
that's what's on the table. And you know, one teammate might feel one particular way and she expresses that, and then another teammate feels that
Yeah,
we should go a different direction and she expresses that. Task conflict.
I see.
That is
Highly
what you
productive.
want. Yeah,
Meritocracy of ideas. All the ideas are
right.
out on the table. It's not about egos. It's the best idea wins.
That's right. And
You
then
want that.
you
Okay.
want that. And then there are, um, there's a tendency for some who haven't either worked in teams very frequently or haven't dealt with healthy conflict, who could view that type of interaction as, well, geez, she's just, and then next thing you know,
She's against me.
it's relationship conflict. Yeah.
Like if she took, okay, she's against me. It's not
Yeah.
my idea she's against, but she's
Yeah.
against me.
And then
I
you
see.
have a teammate
I
who
see.
has a meeting after the meeting, and then there's a meeting after the meeting, and then they're all off talking about
Yeah.
that versus the actual. So you have to, I think that's an important thing to really help develop your team on understanding the difference between. And
I love that idea that, what you really want is really healthy task conflict and low levels of relationship conflict. Not that you're going to never have them, but that they're not constant. They're not amplifying and escalating. They're getting managed. They turn
that's
back
right.
into task conflict kind of. That's kind of cool. I like that
Yeah.
concept.
Yep.
All right. You have said very many interesting, wonderful things. And I think I want to give these guys a chance to chew on them a little bit.
Okay.
And just before I do that, I want to share a little bit about what's coming up here in this space, this leader site space. And then I'm going to send you guys into break rooms and just let you reflect some on these kind of amazing things that Mary is talking about. So I just want to note this one coming up here in a couple weeks. This is going to be a special conversation because Ernie Pomerleau, who those of you in Vermont know, those of you who don't, who aren't in Vermont, he's a very well-known business leader in this community, has had a real journey with death and loss, starting with the early loss of two sisters which prompted him to be kind of a leader in the hospice movement in Vermont. And then just this past fall during COVID, he lost his only daughter to cancer. And we've had very powerful conversations about what he's learned about this, what he's learned from death. And he wanted to come on and just talk about it publicly. So that's going to happen in a couple of weeks. It's probably going to be more spiritual than about business. And I'm really looking forward to it. And then somebody who I interviewed, Jonathan Rubright, said, hey, I want to interview you, Eric. So I said, okay, we'll do that. So in a few weeks, we'll do that. And then Adam Bunting is an extraordinary principal. He's a very special high school principal at a very special school. And I'm delighted that I'm going to have Adam in to talk about how you build a culture. If you can do it with high school students, you can do it in a business. So that's some of what's coming up. All right. I am now going to use the Zoom functionality here to create breakout rooms. Mary, thank you so much for sharing this stuff with us.
It's great to be here.
So you're going to go into this. You'll get to have a small group chat too, Mary.
Okay, good.
Okay. So here we go. I'm going to say welcome back. We had a good chat in my breakout. I was saying, you know, Cheryl Mullins, who's the HR leader at Belco, Vermont Electric Company, was sharing with me that how inspiring it was to hear about this story of the player who doesn't get minutes and how they maybe could almost be an abundance mindset generator on the team because people are so amazed at their ability to not take that too personally and to make the best of it. Mary, how was your breakout room?
It was good. It was really good. It was actually two people I knew. So John and Phil were in it. So we got to catch up a little bit. And then we talked a lot about vulnerability and how that shows up in our lives and our workplaces. And the very real tendency for so many to push that down and not make it known. And how I was expressing how times in my life where I've questioned whether it was appropriate for me to be vulnerable, but did it anyway, and how it actually has never showed up for me in a negative way when I've done it, and just how powerful that data point is from a success standpoint.
So cool. I have to shout out to Ernie Pommel again because he got on the last one I did. He was talking about his challenging relationship with his dad. Yeah. And it was just right out there about it. Yeah. And I talked to him after. I was like, was that cathartic for you or difficult or what? And he said, no, it's just good to not hide it. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So we have about 10 more minutes, and I just want to open up the conversation to any of you who might like to throw in some of your wisdom that's been stimulated by Mary, or maybe ask her a question. Anybody want to do that?
I'd like to throw in something that Mary brought up that I thought was interesting in our little breakout group. She mentioned that GMP is about 50-50 kind of steel toe boots guys driving trucks, putting in lines, and 50% kind of guys and gals that are behind computer screens, and that they're very diverse actually. And it's almost like two different companies. And she talked about what they do to what their common thread is, their common mission is behind safety. And I thought that was really interesting. You know, you've got the folks that are computer wizards that are doing billing, and then the experienced linemen that it would be very easy for them to not ever feel like they work for the same company. But when they put safety out there and that everybody wants to get home, everyone wants to have power, there's people in hospitals that need it, you know, all of these things, that could kind of be a higher purpose a little bit.
Beautiful. John, did you want to say something?
I did. I really loved when Mary talked about looking at the film and seeing where strengths are overused. And I'm going to maybe put her on the spot and see if she can give another example, maybe something from GMP where she's coached somebody through that. I love that framing.
Or McClure herself, the overused strengths of McClure.
I've got a lot.
I got a lot of overused strengths.
I'm overusing them like crazy.
Enough with the strengths, McClure.
Yeah. So, it's almost hard to pinpoint one for both myself or a recent one, because it shows up quite a bit. And it's actually when you start looking at it that way, and you start looking at weakness more from a position of strength that way, it's very powerful, and you start unlocking all kinds of ways that it's showing up for you. So on our team, I very recently have been working with an employee who is very quick to express judgment or feelings. Like, so she'll go from here to here, like is how I describe it. Like she thinks it, she says it. She thinks it, she says it. Like it's just, and it makes for, it's a strength of hers. It makes for her really showing up when we're having dialogue. She's a very active participant, and she shares all kinds of ideas and what she's thinking, and it's very, very positive. And I'm very grateful for that part of her. When it's overused, it shows up in a way where it stunts other people's ability to speak. So, and she doesn't even often realize it's happening. Like she's just sharing stuff and not realizing that she's talked over somebody, or she hasn't left space for somebody else to put their opinion in before she moves on to another one. And what also it happens for her is she'll leave out context. So that particular strength of hers means she's just sharing quick little pieces of information and not laying out before her employees or otherwise the context behind why or what she's feeling. And so she was having this relationship conflict with somebody. And what it really was coming down to is she had just failed to set the context because of this strength of hers where she just shoots information out. And that was one way where describing to her, no, you don't need to view that as a negative. Your ability to really communicate quickly what you're thinking and feeling as a negative. You just have to remember that if you're doing it too often, you maybe didn't set the context, and that might be the reason behind your conflict. So that's one example. For myself, I have a tendency to listen too much. So in this role, how that translates is people often want to know what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling. And if I'm in too much of a listening mode and I'm not expressing that enough, I can be sending the wrong signal about my engagement, or I also can be leading the team to make assumptions about what I'm thinking or feeling versus expressing it. And in prior roles, that was much more of a strength. But as CEO, people want to know what I'm thinking and they want to know what I'm feeling. And so I have to be mindful of that strength of mine of listening might be, I might be overusing it. And I have to remember that as, oh, wait a minute, I should pause here and make sure I've let everybody know what I'm thinking or how I'm feeling about something. And so that's a way in which a strength of mine in the past, I wouldn't say I very rarely overused it. And now it shows up for me in a new role. And I think I, out of the gate, have overused it quite a bit. And to say people are looking for me for strategic vision, right? And so if I'm always in listening mode, I could not be doing my job that way. So I have to be careful I'm not overusing it.
I've been thinking lately about the tremendous power of listening, that you can enliven the intelligence of people through listening.
Yeah.
But also, you rightly, and so interesting to think about the balance between that and taking positions,
Yeah.
poised, dynamic positions.
Yep.
So, watching the time, Mary, talk to us a little about the future of energy. Blow our minds a little. What's going on here? And then I want to end on, I want to note, I just want to give at least 1 minute at the end to your journey with transcendental meditation. And then,
Oh, yes, I'd love to do that.
so what
And,
about the future of energy? What's going on?
oh, it's so amazing, you guys. There is, I'm trying to say you guys not as often. That's one of the things I'm working on. That is so in my vocabulary, the you guys. I'm like, what is it, y'all? Is that what I'm supposed to use? What should I say instead of you guys? It's a
That
tough
sounds
one.
good.
I use folks.
Folks, there you go. It's it's so exciting. There's so much going on. So first, in Vermont, what we're really focused on this coming year, and really probably for the next 5 years, is how GMP and the energy community in Vermont, which includes Velco and all the other distribution utilities, are doing all we can to help the economic recovery in the state. So we've got a lot of work to do as we find our way through the remainder of the pandemic and then on the other side of it. And I really think those of us in the energy industry in Vermont are all thinking of how we can really help drive economic recovery. So that's a focus that I don't think we all knew going into 2020 we were going to have, but that is on the minds of all of us, I think, in this industry. And apart from that, which includes, by the way, connectivity and where we can help the state be more connected. It's hard to imagine a world where you're at home and you don't have access to this type of interaction right now because you don't have, internet availability, you don't have good connectivity. It's really becoming something we all should have access to, the same way that electricity was something we all had to have access to many, many decades ago. So we want to be helpful to that too. How can we leverage our infrastructure and our relationships to bring that to the state? But we're on our path to being 100% renewable by 2030, which we're really, really excited about. And we'll be 100% carbon free by 2025, our power portfolio. So we serve over 70% of the state. So that's over 70% of the state. Plus there are already existing smaller distribution utilities in Vermont that are 100% renewable. So that's really, really exciting for our state. We already have the cleanest electricity supply anywhere in the country. Vermont does. So as we think about why that's so exciting, apart from obviously the important impacts that's going to have on our economy from a jobs perspective and also our climate, we are making a major transition to electric transportation. It's happening. We're all going to drive electric cars, folks, at some point here. So it's coming. And there are some really, really cool models coming down. There's some pickup truck, like Vermont-based vehicles are coming, pickup trucks, SUVs. You probably saw the announcement of General Motors recently. Hopefully you saw the Will Ferrell commercial from the Super Bowl where, it's all happening. The manufacturers are getting behind it. And why that's exciting in Vermont is because you're going to plug your car into one of the cleanest grids in the country, and that's pretty amazing. And that's
right now I'm managing time, so you blew
no,
my mind.
sorry.
That's good. No, it's okay. I wanted to get the 1 minute.
That's kind of it.
Transcendental meditation.
Oh my gosh. So I went into TM because my head was full all the time. There was so much going on, so many thoughts, so much happening, and it was hard for me to like get clarity and to clear.
Even maybe disrupting sleep at times or things.
Yeah,
like
just
that.
things like that. I just, as I kept getting older and more responsibilities and kids and mortgage and, all kinds of things, work. and I just was struggling, you know, my typical coping mechanisms of exercise and things like that were helping, but they weren't, I was missing something. I also had a little high blood pressure, things like that. So I had some friends in my life, as well as following some, you know, celebrities that do TM. And I had heard about it for years, and it just was always kind of there, but I didn't know what to do about it. And so I looked up Vermont's opportunities there, and I found Janet and Edward in Williston, and went to one of the courses and that they give. And it actually, I left. I wasn't sure I was going to do it, and I came back a year later and signed up for it. And it's completely changed my life in a way that is so positive. First of all, my blood pressure is lower, which is a hereditary thing that my father never really managed very well, but he doesn't do TM. So it's helped me physically manage that. And then just spiritually, mentally, emotionally, all those things, it's so easy. I don't have to worry about clearing my thoughts, which is kind of a theme, right? Like, I don't know how to do that. Does anyone know how to do that? I don't know how to do that. And so a meditation exercise that requires me to clear my thoughts was not ever something I was going to be successful at. And TM does not require that. It's easy, it's quick, and it grounds you. It's made me, I have gotten clarity in moments after, okay? It's not like I'm sitting in TM and get clarity. It's when I go into my day and I'm in a meeting, that's when it shows up, and I have clarity that I never used to have before I did that. And I really think it should be available. I really think it should be available to everybody.
It would definitely be a cost-effective thing to do to make it easier for people to afford it.
I know.
And, you know, so preventative. So, hey, I'm glad we got that on there, Mary.
I know.
Nice job with that.
Good.
So listen, we're going to end here. Respect people's time. I just want to thank you. That was a great interview.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for bringing so much heart to it, Mary.
Yeah.
And just being you.
Yeah. No, thanks for having. Thanks for
Thank
setting
you
it up.
so much.
Mary, I'm going to reach out to you because I'd like to continue some of these conversations.
Oh, I love it. I love it, John. Okay.
Right.
Bye,
Thanks.
everybody. Thank you for coming. Bye.